the reason a lot of people don't prioritize the pause or these moments of reflection because they think it means stagnancy. But when I really look at it, it's like, how present was I? Like, how in the moment was I being? I choose to make it a conscious effort that I stay in my being. It's about allowing yourself to show up as all of you and what feels authentic. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Power in the Pause podcast. How are you doing today? As a reminder, please do not forget to hit subscribe so that you do not miss a single episode because I release one every single week. And I'm so thrilled that you have joined me in today's episode because I am here with a very new friend of mine who I am super obsessed with, Lynn Howard. Hello, Lynn. How are you?
Hi, Wendy. How are you? I'm wonderful. Thank you.
I am so glad. I'm so excited you're here. I knew from the first moment that we talked, I was like, oh my God, this woman and I have so much to talk
Same.
about. We have to go deep, and I don't even know if we're going to have enough time today, you guys, and that's okay. But what we are going to dive headfirst into is how each and every one of you get to learn how to pause, reflect, and heal in order to make shit happen. Yes, I dropped the S word, and that is just the beginning of today's episode. So,
Absolutely.
before we dive in, I want to share a little bit more about Lynn with you all. So, Lynn is a seasoned business development strategist and entrepreneur of 25 years as she helps leaders and entrepreneurs break through barriers, build strong foundations, and thrive. Having bootstrapped and sold businesses across 3 continents, Lynn blends a no-nonsense approach with spiritual insight and survivor resilience. As a best-selling author, coach, and podcast host, she's here to help you get out of your own way, get shit done, and grow with purpose. So, Lynn, thank you again for being here today. And I always love asking my guests how it was that they either found power in the pause or how incorporating intentional pauses in your life or business have really been essential for the growth that you have experienced over your life.
Ooh, such a juicy one to unpack, Wendy.
Where to begin, Lynn?
I know. Well, I know exactly where to begin. And it's funny because I don't know if it was a subliminal thing, but for the month of September, I know this is coming out a few weeks later, but my birthday month is September, and I wrote about the pause, and I'm going to come to that second. So I'm going to give you 2 different versions of an answer to that, but they're all the same. I would say the most memorable time that I really found the power in the pause was 25 years ago. I was diagnosed with cancer. And it was kind of almost like this forced pause, but at the same time, not. So just to give you a little bit background, and I think we'll might dive into some of these aspects. Like I came from a very trauma-filled upbringing and life. And at the end of the day, like I was like, I think I was born into this world. Actually, I know I was born into this world very type A, get shit done, like go, go, go. Anyway, like just this like got to make things happen. But because of my life, and I had 2 young kids, they were less than a year apart, both under 5. And find out I had cancer right after I married this man that I had known a year, who is my ex-husband, my best friend, but he had just left for Saudi Arabia. And I remember having to just like sink in to understand what was going on. Him being out of country, and he was really truly my sole support at this point. I had some friends from work, but to solely sink into that pause to say, I got to come back to myself. I have to start putting myself first. I have to look at things through a different lens because otherwise I'm going to be in reactive mode. I have to become my own self advocate. And I know this is a personal aspect, but it really it profoundly, this pause changed my life. It helped me heal on my own terms. It helped me be able to cherish the moments that I had in a very different way. From that point forward, I have I think a different respect for life than what I did pre-cancer. And that's business and personal. And so I would say that that's the first aspect, or the first like memory that I can really remember, especially as an adult, that power of pause, I feel, really not only changed the trajectory of my life, but saved me in a lot of ways. The other aspect is actually something I wrote about in September, is like the pause between when one door closes and one door opens. And this has been just this theme that's played out in my life. And I can't remember if I saw this pre-cancer, but really in the last probably 15 years, I've really kind of sank into this pause of the door closing and the door opening, because they're not always instantaneous. They're not always, same.
Right.
And with that, it gives you the ability to say, okay, what lessons did I learn? Where do I need to continue to grow? Where do I continue to need to heal or evolve? And both professional and personal. But this pause in between the one door closing and the one door opening is essential for us to ground back into ourselves, ground back into what we're doing, ground back into our purpose, ground back into the forward movement in which we want to go, our intuition, etc. And I feel like, for the listeners there, like we don't have to have a traumatic experience for us to understand the value of life, right? I just happen to have it. We can really lean into that pause. We all have those doors that close and those doors that open. As business people, even if you work for C-suites, it doesn't matter. Like, they say there are a few things promised in life, but I think this like door closing, door opening is one of them, next to taxes, right? So,
Exactly.
So when we can like really sink in and find that pause, and sometimes it's really uncomfortable, especially for those of us. And I had to put in the work to really start to love myself and understand myself differently and respect myself in a different way, because being still in that pause of when one door closes and when one door opens, or inside yourself, can feel really uncomfortable if you're not comfortable with your own self. And so I would say, when you now are moving forward and learning to pause, like start with trying to understand yourself in a deeper level and start to love yourself and start to like yourself, even, because a lot of people don't even like themselves, because this will give yourself a more fulfilling, a more purpose-driven actions in life. And for me, I feel like a more colorful kind of experience where you're living life and life isn't, living through you.
Yeah, I love that. I heard something recently where someone said, let the song sing you instead of us singing the song itself. And I think that, so many of us, when we do it the other way, I think that's what causes the stagnancy. I think that's what creates the feeling of being stuck. So how would you tell somebody, or how did you yourself see the power in the momentum of getting unstuck, right? Like instead of just, staying in the mindset of, well, this door closed, now I'm not supposed to go anywhere. Here I am, woe is me, victim mentality. How did you, or how do you help others to really shift their mindset, to really shift their energy, to really break free from what I believe is sort of like a limiting belief cycle that we just inherently become accustomed to? And really, at the end of the day, it doesn't serve us, right? So how can you break out of that to really propel yourself forward to actually manifest and create what it is that you desire, so you're in alignment with your purpose?
Yeah. Okay. There's a few things there. One of the words that you use that kind of drives me a little batshit crazy, because they're usually not my people, is those that tend to stay in victim mode. And I'm not throwing shade, because there are those that need that and that choose to live that life. What I will say about that is, it has to start with you. When I'm walking others through it, even myself, and I have to, for those that are in the victim mentality at the point in their life, because not everybody stays. It's kind of like, are you more optimistic or pessimistic? Are you more growth or fix in different areas, right? So you can float in and out of the victim mindset. It's just if you stay there. And some people choose to stay there. And those are usually people who don't want to grow. So as somebody who works with people to help them get through that process, to to support them in the steps, I have to personally recognize, are they willing to move? If they're not willing to move, I'm not the right person, and it's just going to be frustrating for them. So I can inspire them, hopefully support them in other ways, but it has to start with the individual wanting to change, wanting the growth, wanting to see different. We can lead someone to water. We can't make them drink. We can show them the door. I mean, I've tried to kick some people through it, but they keep coming back, right? So they have to want it themselves. Right. But I think when I'm working with individuals, and even with myself, it was, again, going back to like getting familiar with who we are as an individual, our wants, our desires, our dreams, our purpose. Some people have a really hard time finding their purpose. Some have known it their whole lives. And when I'm working with individuals to help them like start to even imagine what that could be, it gives them the ability to see a wider picture, right? They're able to see, oh, there's more than one door, because a lot of times when one door closes, they're so latched on to that door that they're standing in the doorway, even though that door is being closed and the person on the other side is trying to force them out. So it really is getting them to kind of be seated more in who they are first, right? And where they want to go. Then it is practicing presence. Like practicing presence as like being present has been a tool of mine, but an asset, I would say, that I can help share with others. And again, it's a practice. It's never going to be perfect. It's not something that automatically, even with monks, I live in a Buddhist country. Like I see them not even practicing presence, sometimes being present. But it's not an act that you put on, but it's an act of like, you have to put it in action in order to practice it. And that can be grounding in the, okay, who am I right now? How do I feel? What's going on? After practicing the presence, like really first understand that you want to do it, or connecting with that and what that means, starting to look at ourselves, like all the picture and like what the possibilities are, then practicing presence and say, okay, I'm here right now. And what are my needs right now? What do I want right now? Right. So that way we can reflect. So it's more those self-reflection questions that we ask ourselves, until it becomes really clear. Because a lot of times it's the old us, it's the patterns, it's the new us, the one that we're moving towards. But when you just continue to ask and ask and ask and ask, and you're in that present moment, things start to kind of like go away, and you're able to hear your true intuition. You're able to start getting reconnected back to that true inner voice. And for me, that pause, being reconnected back to our inner voice, seeing what we need in that moment. Do we need a nap? Do we need a break? Do we need to scream? Do we need to dance? Do we need to make that sales call? Do we need, what is gnawing at us that we absolutely have to do in this moment? And the other things that aren't gnawing at us, if we're in a moment of pause and a moment of reflection, asking ourselves this question, then write it on a notepad. You know, for a long time, I still have a hard time sleeping, but for a long time, it was because I was in my, like the voices in my head and like the endless to-do list that I had to do. And so one of my tools was to always have a notepad by my bed. So that way I can get out of my head. But I would always ask myself, is this something that I have to do right now? Like, and truly ask myself. And very few times did I have to get out of bed and like actually do it. But that, to me, that's like the practice of the pause, is like, okay, is it me just in reaction mode, or is it me needing to respond? And in order to get clear on that, it's kind of those small steps they're simple, but they're not always easy. Right. And it is practice, because we find ourselves back in patterns really easy. But I would say that's probably the gist of what I do for myself and for others.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a really good point. Just because the practice is, it's baby steps, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily easy, right? I think that there's a misconception around that. So What are some of the practices? Do you mind sharing like what some of these practices are that, that people can take? I know what I preach in terms of like how I encourage people to kind of embrace, their own pause and sort of what the steps are that I would walk them through. But I'm just curious how you encourage your clients to go into that state of reflection that enables them to then take empowered action after that.
Absolutely. Well, like I said earlier, it's really getting quiet with oneself. Like I personally, how I pause a lot of times is I travel. So right now I'm traveling. I live in Thailand, but I'm in Malaysia and it's only a country away, but still like it gives me the ability to get out of my everyday routine. Even though I'm still working because most of my clients are virtual, because my clients are global, it gives me the ability to get out of the house that I'm in, the situation that I'm in, the nuances, right?
Mhm.
So I always go back to if you want different results, you have to do things differently. Now, each person is slightly different. I thrive and I work really well remotely. I mean, all my clients are pretty much Zoom anyway. But for me, even if the client is not necessarily that type of person, doing it on a personal level, like getting out, and it could just be going to a new park, right? It doesn't have to be expensive. Like you don't have to actually pay money to go to a different country to get into the past. I
Could
mean,
go to a
I would
coffee
encourage you
shop.
to let's go to a new coffee shop, get
Yeah.
out of your everyday routine, feel your senses, right? So sit and be aware. Like, what are you feeling? Are you feeling anxious? Okay, why? And I was that curious kid. I still am. Like, I meet somebody new and I'm the one leading the questions. I'm like, what about this? What about this? Why this? Why this? Why this? What do you do? Until I'm like getting to know them. Like, be that little 2-year-old, that naggy little 2-year-old that's super cute. Like, ask yourself why? Like, just keep going until there's not an auto response, right? Until you start to uncover what it truly is. So getting out of your everyday, going to a coffee shop or going to a new coffee shop or a new country, or if you need alone time, go to a park or something, sit underneath a tree, or you could be walking, it doesn't matter. Reflect on how you feel in that moment. Like, where do you feel it in your body, right? Because there's a lot to that as well. And then start to ask yourself, okay, why? If you're feeling something in your body, one of my tools that I love, but this is more of a healing tool, is I try to remember, okay, when was the earliest memory of me feeling that feeling, right? So if it was when I was, 10 years ago, or if it was when I was 10 or when I was 2, but what's the earliest memory that I've felt that? And then I would start to unpack like what that was, start to poke holes in the belief of the story that I've kind of encapsulated that feeling with, right? Again, it's a simple modality, but it's not easy. But essentially, like trying to see it through new eyes, and as that 10-year-old, try to see it again. If there's other people in the room, like, why would I feel that? Why have I carried that on? For those that journal, I'd say journal about it. Even though I'm an author, I've never been a journaler, but I know a lot of people do. So I just talk it through. I talk to myself a lot.
Nothing wrong with
Sometimes,
that.
yeah,
Yep. Different
sometimes
learning.
yeah, absolutely. I'm an audible learner. And so, but if you're a journaler, then journal through it. But the objective is to get beyond the auto responses, beyond the auto reactions. And there's layers of them. That first layer isn't the only layer. There's lots of layers. So the more that you do this, and this is not just in that particular moment. Obviously, you don't want to just settle for the first answer. It's kind of like whatever. You never want to settle for the first answer. But as you do this over time as well, it just becomes part of your DNA. You start to question automatically. You start to say, okay, and I'm not saying all pauses do you need to like grill yourself and like have this like moment of,
Right.
reflection and revelation. You can just simply be. And there is a power in just simply being. But a lot of times we have to get through the muck, get through the shit before we can start to just be. I'll share a quick story is, I've worked with a lot of coaches, consultants, mentors over the years. And I've also worked with a lot of spiritual, we'll say gurus and mentors over the years. And for years, all of them, all the different ones I've had, probably for the past, I would say 15 years, have told me, Lynn, it's time to just be. It's time to just be. It has taken me really, I would say maybe about 3 to 5 years ago is when I really understood. I was practicing, I was trying to get there, but I had to go through some shit in order to understand, like, just being. And this is someone who, again, my cancer story was 25-ish years ago. Like, I mean, I was putting in the work before that, but there's pivotal moments in our life that end up being more catalyst versus the everyday. But it's the everyday work and the everyday practice that will eventually get us there and give us the fundamentals and the foundations to be on. Because now I understand the practice of just being in more holistic, because I was able to practice it in different aspects of my life. But it's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's something you absolutely have to put in the work and the belief behind it on,
right,
or in, and continue to do it. You have to put in action, because even me deciding to just be is me just being, right? So I have to sink into that. I have to maybe take action to just clear my plate, to give me the ability of the stillness. And the being isn't always in stillness. Even the pause, like I know you've spoke about, isn't always in stillness. Right. It's kind of like when people ask me, oh, do you meditate? Yeah, but not in the way that you would, like the way that people think meditation is.
right.
My meditation looks very different than somebody else's, just like somebody's pause is going to look different. If you're authentic and you believe that that's what it is, and you're progressing, because the pause isn't a stagnant thing either.
No.
Nothing in life is stagnant. Even being isn't stagnant. It's evolving. It's growing. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like the reason a lot of people don't prioritize the pause or these moments of reflection, because they think it means stagnancy, right? And here we are, we're living, I got shit to do. Like, I used to award myself for checking stuff off my list. And I was like, woo, I am on fire, right? Like, here I am checking stuff off. But when I really look at it, it's like, how present was I? Like, how in the moment was I being? Did I
Absolutely.
even want to do those things? Was I more concerned about looking good on paper? Should I have even said yes to half these things that I just checked off my list? And so I feel like so many people who are even listening right now, they don't prioritize these moments of reflection because they believe that there isn't action associated with it, right? And so what would you say to somebody to encourage them to prioritize this in their life?
Yeah. I love that question. And I have to-do lists upon to-do lists upon to-do lists. Just because you're practicing the pause doesn't mean your to-do lists are going away. What happens is, for those of you that are watching and listening, is that your to-do lists become accurate and more purpose-driven in the direction in which you want to go, versus, like you said, just numbingly, like just doing it because you can. And just because you can doesn't mean you have to, doesn't mean you're supposed to. Take this from a very type A, like, I am always doing, but I'm also always being. And always, I hate to use absolutes. So we're never always something, but I would say that the result can be, when you actually practice the pause, is, and I think I said this earlier, is like you end up truly living and not allowing life to happen. You have more direction in your personal, emotional, spiritual, business aspects. You're able to let go and heal and evolve if that's needed, which to me, everybody needs to. Even if you didn't have a trauma-filled life, there's still healing that happens. It is more purposeful. Even if you don't know your purpose, it's still more purposeful for you, because you are appreciating things differently. You see things differently. Because without reflection, how can you appreciate? How can you see how far you've come? And listen, again, take this from a person, even though in some aspects of my life I could reflect and like the healing and the learning. And believe me, it was difficult. It was hard to be in that healing era via the cancer because of the depths that I needed to go to in order to survive. And still, even to this day. But at the end of the day, like, even now, like, I wouldn't change it for anything in the world because it has helped me reconnect to myself. It has helped me learn to love and like myself. It's given me gratitude for everything that I have been through, again, business and personal, and the ability to see it through a different lens, to be able to make the strategic moves forward, because I'm all about strategy and development too. Like, that's my business, right? And I take that into my personal life. We're not one dimensional. So we have all these dimensions. And so at the end of the day, to me, that pause is about freedom. It's about freedom of the circumstances that have held us back. It's freedom from the mindset that has kind of kept us in change. It's freedom from the have to do's. It's freedom from so many things because we put ourselves back into the driver's seat of our lives, and we're able to make the right moves forward for us. And they're not always the best moves, but it's a movement that we chose and you learn from it. And I think, I didn't lean into that aspect as much, but like the learnings that we can have to be able to evolve and grow. I mean, that's all a part of life, right? The evolution, and depending on your spiritual beliefs and blah, blah, blah. Like, I believe I have all these lessons that I'm like ticking off my spiritual checklist, some on purpose and some because I'm just being who I am. But I feel like I'm living a life that was worth something because I've learned to pause and understand and reflect. And again, it's not always the easiest, especially for us bulldozers, type A people who want to get shit done or are in fight or flight mode. Take it from somebody who understands that. Like, I was always running at some aspect until I realized that it wasn't running. I had to change my mindset. I wasn't running from something. I was moving towards, I wasn't running from, I was moving towards, running towards something bigger, more profound. But again, that's mine, my life. No matter how profound or unprofound you think your life is, it is profound in some aspect, but in order for you to see it, you have to do the work to be able to understand that.
Yeah, and I think you bring something up that I am curious for you to dive into. I agree with you about the being. I'm masculine dominant, type A, control freak, love all that.
That's why we got along so well.
I know. It's no wonder we love each other so much. But it's been something where it's like, okay, universe, like, yes, I'm really good at the masculine energy. I'm really good at all of this. But really what I've learned over the years is that my power resides really in the feminine, which is where I believe your being really resides and lives. Because I'm a doer. I'm so good at doing.
Right.
It's the being that's really hard for me. And it's the piece that I have to make I choose to make it a conscious effort that I stay in my being. And so when you talk about being, I would love to know your interpretation, your definition of really what being is versus the doing. Because I think a lot of us, especially a lot of people listening, don't necessarily understand like truly what being is.
So a couple of things. First of all, we have all of these outside ideations and trends and different things that kind of happen around us. And I am the same, like type A, super masculine, all the things that you just named. And one of the things I had to realize is like, obviously leaning in, we have feminine and masculine energy, all of us, men and women. in us, and it's when to use it and to honor both and to understand the nuances. And I guess the reason why I'm bringing this up is because being isn't forcing yourself to be more feminine. Being isn't forcing yourself to be something more. Being is really sitting in to say, okay, these are all my people, like my internal people and like all my shit. These are all
Your team.
my voices,
Yes.
my inner beings. And okay, and these are all the roles that they play. And like understanding that being is sitting with the whole of who you are. You know, there are some people that love stilettos. That's not me, right? I'm more of a wedge type of person or whatever. And so at the end of the day, some people might feel stilettos, if I'm looking at an external factor, just to give a visual, that stilettos and wearing lots of makeup is more feminine because they look the part. It's not that. So I think what my advice is like, you have to decide what being means for you and not allow somebody else's ideas and input define that. Being is sitting with the whole of who you are, understanding that you don't have to force things all the time or force things at all. So, I mean, sometimes I feel like you need to, but you need to honor who you are and what your needs are. I was having this conversation with a girlfriend not too long ago in Bangkok. One of our really good girlfriends, dear girlfriends, had her grand opening for her spa and different things. And my girl Jen, she's like, I really wanted to wear a pretty dress, but a dress just isn't me. And I know I'm going on the feminine side, right? Or what you were talking about that. And she's like, a dress isn't me. Like I would look awkward in a dress, but you always look great in a dress. I was like, well, thanks, but that's me being me, right? Don't put on a dress because you think that that's what you need to be. And again, this is a visual, but in a non-visual aspect, I'll give another thing. When I'm helping individuals look at goals, one of the questions, like break down their goals. I have a whole process, blah, blah, blah. You know, most people set goals, but one of the questions I ask, are these your goals? Are these your goals? Because a lot of times they're not. And you know how that manifests is they never get done. They stay on your to-do list forever. Right. And that means that you're not being true to yourself. You're not being who you need. Now, some things have to be on your list, even though they're not really your goals or whatever. But when we're seated in the being of who we are, when we absolutely don't allow, it doesn't mean that we aren't affected by others' opinions or ideations or whatever, or even the circumstances in which we came from. One of my quotes that I use a lot is, we are not our circumstances, but our circumstances are a part of us. And when we can understand that that is part of us, but they don't have to define who we are, just like the ideations in the outside world doesn't define who we are. We choose. We always have a choice. To me, that is being. To me, taking ownership, 100% responsibility and ownership for who we are, where we're going, and just be seated in the, like this whole podcast is about the pause. That is being. To me, that is being.
Yeah, I agree. It's about allowing yourself to show up as all of you and what feels authentic. I mean, I keep hearing the word authenticity coming through, and I think it's so hard for so many people because even like me, like I was raised to be a people pleaser, because when I showed up in my being as all of me as a little girl, it got shut down. And it's something that as an adult, I've really, when I say I work at it, it's because I'm really pausing and consciously going back to, am I being Wendy? Am I allowing all parts of Wendy to show through unapologetically? And people want to
100%.
leave, see you later. People want to stay, welcome to my world. And I think so many of us have a hard time. I think a lot of people have a hard time sitting with that because, we want to be liked by everybody. And I feel like that's more often than not the way that people want to be perceived. And at the end of the day, but it's like you drink the poison expecting the other people to die, and it's like you're the one who's dying inside. Right? You're furthering yourself away. And at the end of the day, I mean, who are you living life for? Right? You get one chance here on this earth.
100%. 100%. I love that quote. I'm gonna have to Google it afterwards.
I know I don't know why it's like I'm having like old woman brain at the moment, but like
That's all right. I get it all the time. but it's true. Like nobody knows your journey.
No.
And nobody can walk your journey for you. And listen, I'm not going to say that I'm not affected by other people. I'm not still like, there are times where my own, I call them skeletons, come out, but I'm leading the dance typically. And I understand this, like, I understand my nuances. And this helps me be, because then I understand what's being triggered. Right. And I also, one thing that we didn't speak about, and I think that this is super important, and I kind of alluded to it a little earlier, is I have learned to reach out, not pre-cancer, but post-cancer. I learned to reach out when I needed help. I don't always do it in a timely manner.
But you get there.
But I get there. And I've always had coaches and mentors, spiritually, business, personal. But even just recently, like, especially because of me being a cancer survivor, I have a lot of preventative and proactive about my health. And I've struggled with a lot of things, which I write about in my last book. And I have a lot of naturopaths and homeopathy doctors. Typically, I'll have somebody, actually a few weeks ago, my last trip to Malaysia, I had this like old pattern show up, right? And because I was in my being, I saw it and I was like, whoa, where did you come from? And I could not shake it. And so I reached out to my homeopathy doctor and I was like, listen, like, I've done a lot of healing around this shit, but I need help because I do not like this thought. I do not like this, like the way that I'm now. And you talk about people pleasing, like I'm putting my life on hold to accommodate somebody else. Like, this is not a pattern I want. And I don't know why it's coming back up, but I need help. Right. So it is important for us to surround ourselves with individuals that can support us in this journey. And I write a whole chapter in our first book about loving them from afar. I have learned, now I understand. I'm a single person. I've lived alone for a year since my kids graduated. Like, I'm okay, but I've learned to love myself and like myself. So I'm okay living alone. And I know that's not necessarily the norm, but being alone doesn't make me afraid or whatnot. But if you having people that can help you navigate this, but also like being able to be really clear of saying, oof, this isn't me. I need external help, or I can't do the work like alone, is super important as well, because we need the right people around us and we need to learn to love the people from afar who aren't those right people. And this would be, I mean, there's no secret. Like, I love my family, but they are not healthy for me in the being, right? They trigger. And so sometimes we have to make the hard decisions to say, you know what? I put me first. I put my journey first. And granted, I have kids. I know you have kids too. Like, they were great drivers for me because I wasn't going to allow them to see different. I wanted to be better for them. But when I made the shift of like being better for myself is when I really realized like, this is where the power is. And yeah, surround yourself with the right people. You're going to have to get rid of people around you. Again, it's simple in concept, but it's not easy to make the moves. But the reward is absolutely mind-blowing. It's very multifaceted, but yeah. So I love that you brought that up, because having the right people and letting go of people is essential. My co-author, my business partner, often says, when you sit in the shit long enough, when you stay around the shit long enough, you're going to start smelling like shit too. So you got to make a move. You got to make a move.
Yeah. Cause at least I've learned the hard way. Like, no one's going to pick you up and move you yourself. Like, everyone's worried about themselves. So it's about time that we all start taking care of ourselves first, because I mean, it's like the same metaphor, put your oxygen mask on before you help your kids. Like, I've learned that the hard way. I learned it in my divorce. I learned it when my mom passed away. I learned it, through different other breakups I've had since my divorce. Like, no one is going to stop their life to come and help you with yours. Like, you've got to raise your hand and you've got to be the one to proactively ask for help. I mean, I learned again, also the hard way, that asking for help is a strength. I used to think that doing
100%.
everything myself was the strongest version of me, and it wasn't. It was really a cowardly version of me. And what I will always, I agree with you. I mean, I'm a huge proponent of raising your hand and asking for help, because I don't know about anyone else listening, but like, the faster I can get through shit, the better off I know that all I am going to be and my world will become. So why not ask? Why not raise your hand? You can sit in the shame and the guilt and, whatever other emotions are coming up for you, or you could just pick up the phone, and we could talk about so many more things. I think you're going to have to come back on.
I do want to make one comment, because
Yes.
I'm assuming your audience is a lot like us, like doers.
Yes.
We're the ones who hold everybody else's lives together. We're the ones who think everybody's like, she's super independent, she doesn't need help. I actually wrote about a post like this. And then we have, because we all have our own archetypes, right? And then we
Yes.
have damsels in distress who seem like they don't ever have to ask for help. Everybody comes running because their life is always in shambles. And so what I'm saying, I guess, to those that are more like us, that are that hyper independent, that Joan of Arc, the queens who are powering through. First of all, I see you. I understand that it's hard for you to ask for help. I understand, because we feel like we can do it. And even when we're trained, like, I know this, I teach others, like I have consultants or all these people around me to help me, but I still have to remind myself, like, it's okay to ask for help. But also, I want you to understand, and I say this with love, that not everybody will understand that you're asking for help, because they're so used to you being that powerhouse. And so it's another nuance that people like us have to navigate. And I feel called to say this right now, because I don't want you to be discouraged or disheartened because people don't hear you. It's not that they don't hear you, they just can't compute, because you have always, and I'm not saying it's fair. It is what it is. And I'm not saying that you won't find people who will have the ability to do that. That's why I have my homeopathy doctor. That's why I have certain paid professionals, especially because I know that I can go to them. And yes, maybe it's their job to help me through it, but at least I'm getting that support that I need. So I just want to say to all those that are out there that are those hyper independent ladies like us who almost never ask for help, but when we do, sometimes it falls on deaf ears. When it's like really, like, especially profound, it's not that it's falling on deaf ears. I mean, maybe some, but it's just because they don't have the capacity or the understanding around, or be able to compute that, this person who always has their shit together, always is helping everybody else, always doing for others, needs help. Find a few key people who can help you be able to navigate this, because I don't want you to be disheartened and discouraged when you start being and start not doing things in the same way for everybody else, and then start asking and it falls on deaf ears. You have to change your circle. You have to find those who really can help you. And the matter of fact is those damsels in distress in the archetypes are those that do get more attention because they've seated themselves. And do you always want to have your life in their manner? And the answer is typically no. So there are good, bad, and indifference in everything. And unfortunately, we have to take some of the indifference and the bad with the good. And so I guess I'm saying this to say, I see you. It sucks. It might not feel fair sometimes, but you got this and you'll figure it out.
Beautiful words of wisdom to bring our episode to a close. Lynn, thank you so much for being here today.
Wendy, thank you. I appreciate you.
Oh, ditto. It goes both ways. I love you so much. And I'm so appreciative that you said yes to come on and have a conversation with me. So thank you again from the bottom of my heart. I love and adore you so much. Thank you for sharing your wisdom today.
Same. Thank you. I would be on your show in a heartbeat, obviously. As soon as I met you, I knew you were my peeps.
You are my peeps. I also want to make sure that people know where to find you. So where are the best places for people to connect and get into your world?
Absolutely. Obviously everything will be in the show notes, but LinkedIn, Insta, and on Facebook. And you can either do my personal pages or even the Pursuit of Badassery. But really, if you want to connect with me, probably the best would be a LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook DM is the quickest. So the Pursuit of Badassery with an IE. We just are dropping our 100th episode. We also do it weekly. While we're recording this, our 100th episode came up. So the Pursuit of Badassery, and that's actually the title of our first 2 books too, and our brand name for one of the businesses. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, we will be sure to have links, you guys, in the show notes so that you guys can check out the amazing work that Lynn is doing, has done. And as I try to do with every single one of my podcast episodes, is to educate each and every one of you guys on how incorporating intentional pauses into your life is only going to create more power and growth and healing for each and every one of you guys. So thank you so much for being here with us today. As always, sending you all so much love and light. Mwah. Bye, everybody.